Welcome to Connected Learning. This is the third in our series, and we're hoping to make this a regular community and invite you to invite your friends. You can see the archives of past sessions at connectedlearning.tv, and you can also find out the schedule for future sessions. The format here is pretty simple. It's what's called a fishbowl. You'll see a number of people who are participating via Google Hangouts. Our guest today is Philip Schmidt, who is the founder of P2PU, and he's going to tell us all about P2PU, and we're going to talk about the kind of learning that happens at P2PU and its connection with connected learning. And we have a number of respondents here who are going to talk with Philip. Those of you who are watching through live stream, I will be one of the people who is going to try to monitor the text chat. Please talk about anything you want connected to the talk here. And also, if you have questions for Philip, we will try to relay at least some of those to Philip in the process. So why don't we start from the top? Charles, do you want to introduce yourself? I guess we're not getting video from you, but maybe audio. Okay, not hearing from Charles. Joe. Joe, Joe, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay.
Can
And I guess
just introduce yourself.
yep.
Joe.
Okay. Maybe I can introduce myself.
Joe, are you here? I'm here. Just
And
introduce yourself.
Charlie. Let's see. Hopefully this is going well, and I'm not accidentally closing the tab. So anyway, I'm Joe Corneli. I'm a PhD student in the university, in the Open University in the United Kingdom. I'm also on the board of directors of planetmath.org, and that's what my PhD is about. I've taught some courses at P2PU and sat in on and participated in some other courses, and together with Charlie, who I'll introduce a little bit, worked on really evaluating the experience of course creators at P2PU. So with that, we created something we called Paragogy, which we've since been further developing with Howard and a new project which we call Peeragogy. Anyway, so it's all kind of a little bit theoretical, but supposed to be practical advice for people creating courses and co-learning, peer learning experiences. So that's what my contribution to the conversation will be about today.
Hi, LB. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Luca. I am a PhD student in sociology at Boston College. I studied sociology of education and economic sociology. Currently, I'm a research assistant for Juliet Shore as part of the Connected Learning Research Network. And I've been helping out on DIYU with Allison, helping out with that class, and I'll be beginning my research here shortly on open learners, starting with the people that are working on the peer-to-peer university platform.
Okay, great. I monitored part of the DIYU course. That's the one that Anya
Yes.
started.
Yes, I'm there in her absence at the moment, so it was a great opportunity for me to be able to jump in.
So, Philip, why don't you just get started and tell us about P2PU and what you're doing, and then we will get into conversation mode about this.
Great, sure. So I've got a few slides, but I figured it'd be nice to say a few words and people can actually see me before I launch the slides. And maybe also want to thank you, Howard and Mimi. As you know, I've been a big fan of your work for many years, and a lot of the ideas that I think influenced P2PU and have influenced and continue to influence P2PU are connected to the work that you guys have been advancing, and to see connected learning kind of come together as this framework that really covers a lot of the things that I think we care about and maybe have struggled to articulate at moments, or it's difficult sometimes to make the connections, and to see kind of that emerge is fantastic, and to then reflect a little bit on P2PU's connection to those ideas is a great opportunity. So I'm going to try to be very fast in my presentations and run through things fairly quickly, and then I'm happy to jump back to anything, and if it wasn't clear, or people want to dig deeper. And I also want to apologize in advance for the potential dog barking that usually happens during every webinar. Without fail, the dogs will find some reason to bark at something, and so if there's dog barking, don't be alarmed. So I can't see the back channel when I switch on the presentation. So if there's anything that I'm going too fast or it's not working, just interrupt me. Way of recognizing them. And so we've been thinking a little bit about that. And the big, I think, challenge right now that we're very interested in, and we're keeping an eye on, trying to keep an eye on all the other people who are working in this space, is how do you assess 21st century skills? So we all know that the really meaningful stuff isn't if you can type HTML into an editor, but it's if you can connect with other people, if you can solve problems, if you are able to help other people if they get stuck, and like those are the skills that really are meaningful going forward. It's kind of the ability to learn new things rather than having built up some stock of factual knowledge that you can feed back if someone asks you. And so, but no one has really figured out good ways of assessing those skills online at scale. So how do you scale online courses that don't stink? So let me, maybe stepping back, when P2PU started, the idea was that anyone could come and set up a course, and we used the terminology course without thinking too much about it. And then people could sign up for the course, and the courses were, we didn't really put any restrictions into people's ways. Like, you were free to run your course however you wanted. Some courses met synchronously on Skype or IRC chat. Some courses did asynchronous discussion on mailing lists and using wikis and using a whole range of platforms, really. And what we found is that there were some courses that worked really, really well. People had a great experience, and other people didn't. And unfortunately, the frustrating and not very useful conclusion from looking at across those courses was that great courses depend on great facilitators. And unfortunately, great facilitators don't scale easily, because in an environment like P2PU, you would have someone come and run an amazing course and facilitate a group of other people who were truly working with each other and, as peer learners. And then they would move on and they'd lose interest in running the course again. So, we kind of ran into this problem that it wasn't easy to scale great facilitation of these peer learning environments. And then lastly, what we were quite surprised by is that the existing content, if you type in, content for learning psychology or content for learning this or courseware or textbooks, a lot of that content is really boring and doesn't inspire you and doesn't really help you get excited. And so two things we've tried kind of around this, and I'll just kind of show a glimpse of them. One is what we call challenges, which is really a new model for courses. They don't have start and stop dates. We get involved in the content development. We try to design the content in a way that makes it clear that there's a relevant context and that there's a problem that people are trying to solve. Every challenge requires some kind of active making. So you're making something and then you're sharing it with other people. So there's kind of a productive task in the challenges. It's really project-based learning online, and we've run a few examples for challenges and actually done a little report on how well it worked. And then the other example that I would kind of put out there that I'd love to talk about more is the DIYU course, and I'll let Luca and Howard and others talk about that more. But the idea was there, like P2PU really didn't offer anything for people who didn't. So if there was no course in a topic that you were interested in, then you could really only start a course, and many people didn't want to start a course. And so there was a large group of people who were interested in learning something, and we couldn't offer them anything. And so we partnered up with Anja Kamenetz and a bunch of other people to see if there isn't a way to get self-learners involved at a kind of DIYU level, with the hope that they would start up their own courses and set up their own learning networks and build these communities. And then maybe, you know, as the next step, they'd help other people and they'd build, you know, kind of communities that would pull other people in. So it wasn't just their personal learning experiences. We're interested in recognizing achievements, but all I'm going to say is badges here. Other people are doing lots of work on badges. We've been very interested in that for a long time. And if people want to dig into that, then I'd be happy to. And let me kind of check with you, Howard. These are kind of my 3 questions that I'm really interested in exploring more, but I'll hand over to you and see how you want to structure the conversation from here.
Well, we'll try to get to those questions and questions that come from the back channel, but I'd love to hear what Joe and Luca and Charles have to say. I don't know whether you got your audio fixed, Charles, but Joe and Luca, do you want to respond to your experiences with P2PU?
I guess I can respond. Oh, did Charles get his?
So I'm happy to say a few words about that. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem like you're saying anything,
we're waiting to see with Charles. I'll communicate with him.
So the one point that stands out to me off of that list was one that I thought a lot about, which is what support do facilitators need or want? And of course, a great facilitator probably doesn't need a whole lot of support. They already know what they're doing, and they've just got to get in there and do it.
Versus sharing the content, but also doing the type of work, building the type of cultural capital that is relevant in a platform, you know, in online learning. And so I guess, you know, I'm really interested in where that might start to go.
Can I chime in, Howard, or what happens next?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So thank you for the responses. This brings me to a big question that I have, and it sounds like you guys might be able to help me answer it a little bit. So in most of the, at least in Joe's and in your thoughts, the learning experience hinges on the facilitator, and you had some good ideas on, well, how could we support facilitators better? How could we build a larger community of facilitators? So as a way to scale learning opportunities, but using the facilitator as kind of our vector of scale. And so that's something we've tried to go away from a little bit. And you know, what I'm trying to figure out is, like, is it possible to go beyond? So my challenge with that is that you're still talking about a fairly traditional, even though the practices in that group may be, you know, peer learning and maybe non-traditional at all, in terms of scale, there's a certain limit to the number of people you can support that way. And I mean, I know you're doing a really fantastic job running courses online, and you know, so I don't know how many people you're comfortable working with, but I would assume it's, you know, somewhere between 10 and 50 max. I mean, 50 is probably beyond. So so you're still going to have that scalability problem, and you're also still going to have kind of what I would say is a challenge in the compared to the connected learning approach, which I am so excited about, is like you're still having these kind of boundaries, right? Like, this is my group with the facilitator, and so what we've been trying to do with these challenges, which is really just a new word for courses, is to design them and help people design them in a way where they almost don't need a facilitator, right? So you kind of embed good practices, or you try to embed good practices in the content itself by posing interesting questions, by encouraging people to ask their own questions, by pushing kind of things back to the user, but kind of giving them enough nudges or hints how to get started. And I'm wondering if so obviously the theoretical argument is that would scale much easier. Like if you look at some of those huge programming classes, for example, like Code Academy, it's completely challenge-based learning without a facilitator at all, and you can scale it almost infinitely. And then you have these very large-scale experiments at Stanford and MIT at the moment with hundreds of thousands of users that are really just passive watching, and then all of the peer interaction is kind of self-organized in these question and answer forums. So I guess my question is, can we scale connected learning with the facilitator? How would we do that? But also, can we scale connected learning? And maybe is it true connected learning when actually we're trying to take the role of the facilitator out of the picture somehow?
So, actually, I think facilitation is useful, but why can't people take turns doing it? Can we scale the knowledge of how to facilitate? Joe, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
I think we just started at the same moment. So I think the problem with this model is that a facilitator then, instead of being a facilitator, becomes a content producer, and it's not clear that the skill of producing good content is any more ubiquitous than the skill of facilitating courses synchronously well. So it is absolutely the case that once you have some good content, hundreds and thousands of people can use it. This is like Khan Academy or any other kind of open educational resource is like this, so that it is good for providing access to knowledge, this kind of model, if you have good content. But if you have a bunch of sort of crummy content, then it's not really clear that that's going to be better.
I have a couple of questions from the live stream back channel that I want to get to. First, I simply want to respond that I think that we're in the very early stages of learning how to co-learn, and that I think that there are skills of facilitation that you don't have to get a degree to learn some of, and I think that it's a little bit like each one teach one. When I was talking about this kind of learning, I was reminded that after the American Civil War, when the slaves were freed and they were trying to spread literacy, that this idea of each one teach one came about, and I think that to the degree that we have tremendous resources available online for people that were never available before, and to the degree that there is a hunger to learn and people who feel that the traditional educational establishments are not sufficient for them, then people will learn how to do that facilitation and teach each other. And I think probably courses are going to be better with people who have more experience at it.
Kind of coming back to the question around equity, and in a way, that's part of the reason also why building facilitator-less communities where people really self-organize is something we're very interested in. And just to be clear on this point, I don't think we've totally nailed it in any way. I don't think we'll ever totally nail anything at PDPU. Actually, as the moment we've kind of figured something out, we'll probably try to do the next thing. But I'm just interested in this idea of the challenges as a way to overcome some of those problems. And yeah, the equity. I'd love to go deeper into this equity question that I think you're alluding to, not just for the facilitators, but also participants and people who benefit from these experiences right now.
Hello.
Can I just say a few words about how I envision things working in a place like Planet Math, which is a content. Shall I continue?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just in a subject specific place like planetmath.org, which currently is just an encyclopedia of mathematics that's been peer produced, but which I'd like to turn into a peer produced educational resource. Hey, Charlie, you're broadcasting audio. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
So
yes, you can.
Okay,
I'd like to turn it into a peer produced educational resource. Yeah. I imagine tutors,
Hi, we seem to have lost Joe for the moment here. I simply want to add that one of the premises of connected learning.
Maybe Charlie should have a big turn here because he's been so patiently quiet for a long time.
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So I guess to the facilitator-led courses and scaling issue that we seem to be talking about a lot, I think it's I think that's it's something that needs to be considered and played around with. But in my experience at PDPU and organizing and taking courses, as well as on Pedagogy.net and with Pedagogy, I think the biggest thing, whether it's the facilitator or the students, is just people getting stuff done and doing things. And regardless of a paid incentive or not, at this stage of open education, the biggest thing is just getting stuff done, and getting stuff done will lead to higher quality materials that are currently available by paid institutions. It will lead to higher quality facilitators that are available at paid institutions. Like, the money is something that is very important, and I'm, for myself, like a for-profit open educator, I guess. But the biggest thing, I think, is just getting stuff done and doing like what Philip does, what Howard does, what Joe does. They do stuff all the time, and they're always making progress, and always researching and talking with people, and just making stuff happen. And that's like, it depends on money, but it also doesn't. So I guess I've talked for a bit. Yeah.
And of course, there's the paradox that a lot of us, all of us who are speaking here, do put a lot of time into this for not a lot of financial compensation, because we love to do it. And at the same time, every day I read about these .edu startups that are getting millions of dollars to try to scale education. And in most of the cases I've seen, they're really just scaling the banking model of education. I did want to add, though, that one of the premises of this idea of connected learning is that there are a lot of people out there who are learning and teaching each other without financial incentives, because they're really interested in what they're doing. So a lot of gamers or people in other interest-based communities are learning for other incentives. And I think that the financial economic equity question is a real one, and I don't think we ought to expect some people to become .com entrepreneurs and make very, very large amounts of money, and others to pioneer this for free. On the other hand, learning is what humans do, and we have these great learning resources, and a lot of people love to learn. So I think that it's not really a pejorative to say that people are doing this without financial incentive. I think that there's a mix of incentives out there, and learning is valuable. Whether you can translate that learning, such as learning how to code, into a skill that you can be paid for, or whether it's something that enriches your life. So, Philip, that leads to one of the questions. What are good pathways from interests to learning communities?
Yeah, and so, okay, let me riff on that question a little bit, because it actually connects perfectly to this discussion. And there's a great discussion in the chat. It's kind of difficult to keep track of all the good discussions. I'd be interested in Luca's perspective, especially because, in a way, DIYU is an effort to do exactly that, right? Someone who's at the stage where they have an interest and they're motivated and they want to learn something, and then you're trying to give them the tools and a path or a model that they then can themselves kind of embark on this learning pathway. And I'd love to hear a little more about the experience that you guys have had in the DIYU course, and your thoughts on, is that a pathway that is appropriate or suitable for potentially anyone or everyone, or do you see problems there around? Are we actually perpetuating kind of inequitable access to education, because those exciting new ways of learning are actually don't really work for everyone?
Yeah, I think if I can chime in, and I guess I'll couch with this with, I've only been participating in the DIY platform for, I guess, the last couple months here. So just with this new set of learners, um, I can speak from my experience with traditional higher education that anytime you're working with equity issues, um, you've got to go a little bit above and beyond. So having worked with, like I said, first generation college students, students that are underrepresented in traditional higher education, you've got to work with the process, like I said, building cultural capital, building social capital, building the things that translate into worth and value that traditional universities usually do for you. So, I like how DIYU talks about, building your peer network. That's building the social capital, because those peers are the ones that are going to help you find, okay, not only help you find the content knowledge, but help you find the jobs or whatever the way is to translate into, what you're doing. The problem I see that, talking to people, like I said, who've kind of been failed by this traditional model of higher education and said, hey, why don't you get online? Why don't you try this DIY class? And they say, well, first of all, why would I do that? What's that going to give me at the end of the day? So not that people don't have an interest in learning. I know plenty of people that would love to just run with ideas and interests and learn all day. But if it's not translating into something at the end of the day, the way that supposedly a university degree does, and I think that's completely arguable for who university degree translates for, most people aren't going to jump on board. I think in Anya's book, when she starts talking about ACE credit recommendations, so the way the American Council on Education is starting to recognize learning the way we recognize military service, the people, doing, if those institutional channels can be solidified, I think things like peer-to-peer university can absolutely take off for people. But without that incentive, I think on the other end, or somebody helping and saying, hey, you can go and do this ACE credit recommendation process, or here are universities that will recognize the learning that you've done here, or here are ways that people have gotten jobs. I think people need to see that it has happened before they jump and invest a lot of time in just learning, because it's no different, I think, than watching your favorite soap opera for 6 hours a day. It doesn't translate.
Well, I guess to that point, I really like the end of the day question. It's really well put. I think Philip, in a previous thing, has written something about how the game changer will be when, like, Google hires the first person who learned about computer science by getting badges. They hire a badge person over somebody with like a master's from Stanford, and I think that's like pretty much, inevitable, just because like the learning like this can move faster. But getting to that point, much people here who are, whatever, different, who do this stuff for no money. Some would say foolish, but yeah, I guess the end of the day, I just want to say the end of the day question is really good. And one answer is, as Philip said previously, is when the programmer gets hired for having badges as opposed to a college degree.
Yeah, I'd also love to chime in here. I think you're kind of hitting a very interesting and unfortunately a little bit painful point, I think, Luca, because in a way, the reality is that learning for learning's sake right now, at least, especially at the adult level, I think for kids it's still different, fortunately, but at the adult level, learning for learning's sake is kind of a luxury right now for many people, and the people who can engage in that luxury are in a way part of an elite. They don't necessarily have to be the richest people or the most powerful people, but there's certainly kind of a class structure to this, and I think it's one of the big challenges for I think connected learning to demonstrate that it can be a framework that can spill over across the informal and the formal education environment and kind of provide a better model. Right now, which is kind of your entry ticket to life almost, and some people are able to circumnavigate that, but many people are not, and it's not that they're kind of it's not their fault, right? So it's the kind of the system is really fundamentally unwilling to change, and so for me, kind of the position we've taken at P2PU is that we're never going to try to be an accredited institution and play as part of that structure. It's really awesome to be a sharer. And so like I've never forgotten that, and I think it's a little bit like that's the P2PU approach. Like let's just be really excited and kind of curious and naively motivated about this. And lots of things will go wrong, but lots of things will eventually start going right, and hopefully we can drive innovation that way.
Charles, Joe, and LB, do you want to give a kind of anything else you want to say? Jump in now, because we really want to close this in the next 5 minutes.
Well, so I threw a link into the chat about another model that's both a real existing model called the Free Technology Academy, where you can get master's credits for studying free software and other technology kinds of issues. And the link I pasted, though, was reconsidering rebuilding that thing on a more distributed model that would include things like on-the-job training for people, as well as the ability for more people to make money by participating in this. So that's an example that I put a lot of thought into myself, and that we're actually trying to work on. So if some folks here are interested, that's just a plug for that as one place to throw some engagement. Yeah, and I guess I'll close with that, because that's, I think it is absolutely a good time to start building different models, and hopefully as the different models come into existence, networking. So it's been a treat to talk with quite so many people here who are and doing cool different things, and I hope we can keep that going. Yeah, Charlie said be a sharer yourself, so thanks for organizing this conversation where we could do that. I'll be over and out unless I get called on again, so thanks, bye.
Charlie?
I guess I hadn't heard that. I like that, build a culture of sharing by being a sharer yourself. That's really a cool idea. And I think also, I guess, something in terms of money and like supporting these ideas, with the way technology has evolved, it's not too, aside from time and a certain amount of know-how, it's not that expensive to try out these new models of learning, and provided proper copyright licensing is used, like the nice part is even if you fail, people can like build off what you did legally and quickly without maybe you even ever knowing. So I guess just like there's a really low cost of failure right now in a lot of ways, and that's something that we need to. I mean, like myself, I'm not in a traditional academic institution. I work for myself in my own business. It's an open education for-profit business, mr.danoff.org. But I think Philip's right. It has to come from inside and outside. And that's something that people need to be careful about, alienating traditional education, especially in this community, and saying it's broken or things like that are very dangerous statements that when really what we want is everybody to be involved with us and playing with us and learning with us. But anyway, thanks, John, for organizing this. Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Joe and LB. Bye.
LB, did you want to jump in with the last word here?
Yeah, sure. I just also wanted to say thanks. It's been great to get to talk to all of you. I don't get an opportunity to do this often, and I think just also being a sociologist, we're critical all the time. So I want everybody to know that I do have a lot of hope in these models. And Charles, as you were saying, not just saying traditional education is bad. I was just thinking about it. There's a lot of great things that are done in traditional education to bring people that are kind of on the fringes into the academy and into a place that you can learn, that maybe these learning platforms can learn from, the way that you can work with folks that might not be as represented. So there is something to learn there, and I would love to continue that dialogue in the future. So thanks again, guys.
Philip, I don't want to rush us because this is a fantastic discussion that we all want to continue, but apparently live stream keeps crashing, so we may lose it at any minute. So I want to give you an opportunity to have your last word to this audience, to this public, and maybe we can talk about this some more later.
Thank you. Yeah, my last word would really only be that I thought this was a great example for the connected learning framework, with both kind of the all the things that are exciting and good about it, but also highlighting all of the challenges about it, that we're all very motivated to be on this conversation. Now, if we don't do something with this conversation, it's kind of, is it, how meaningful is it? So it has to like lead to practice. How do we get more people into this conversation who maybe don't think that this is something that they could be a part of, or they don't even know it exists, right? Even just reaching out. But at the same time, for me, so I thank you very much for having me and for the opportunity and the kind of connections, both intellectual, but also just human connections and conversations. For me, kind of really support the things that you're saying with the framework for connected learning, and how that can provide a much more flexible, engaging, and kind of welcoming, I guess, opportunity for us to conceptualize how learning works. And so thank you for the practical experience with this, and I'll definitely be joining you in the following weeks.